The ACN podcast is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners and sponsors, including the Agile Alliance. As a nonprofit membership organization, the Agile Alliance is an excellent resource to help you along your Agile journey. To learn more about the Agile Alliance and our other sponsors, as well as how you can become a sponsor or supporter of our show, please visit acnpodcast.org for more information. And thank you for your support. Good morning and good evening, everyone. This is the Agile Coaching Network. I'm Ray Arell. Welcome to this great new month. Hopefully all of you have had a spectacular month. It's kind of interesting when I think about this show. We're hitting episode 68. And if you're new to the Agile Coaching Network, we've been doing this for roughly around 5 years. And this is a conversation between people who are doing Agile, some people who have been doing Agile for a long period of time. Some of you might be new to Agile. And what the goal of this conversation is for us is to be able to share between this group of people who join in on each month in order to share these ideas, talk about different concerns that you might have, really explore a particular topic as deep as we can. That involved with, you is, the person who's joining us today. That's about you sharing your own thoughts. You are a part of the conversation. No matter how long you've been doing Agile, this is a place where we are going to talk about the particular issues that are top of mind to us. So it might be a little bit different than you're used to. We're not just going to have a group of talking heads that are sitting in the background giving you just exclusively our thoughts. We actually want to interact and hear what you have to say as well. Joining me on a normal month, we have Shauna, Hendrik, Jorg, Diana, as well as myself. We're sort of the conversation starters. We were the ones who kind of get things going. And then this month, I think Hendrik and Diana, they're off on vacation. We're starting to go in. I think Germany just had a vacation yesterday, and Diana might be taking a longer vacation starting because we have the Memorial holiday coming up for the US as well. We are brought to you by the Agile Alliance. If you're not familiar with who the Agile Alliance is, Agile Alliance is a nonprofit organization that started the Agile movement, gosh, how long ago? 20 years ago. If you look at some of the Agile Manifesto authors, they formed up the nonprofit first to just go do a conference. If you look at the big Agile conference that's coming up in Nashville, Agile 2022, that was the event that the original formation of that nonprofit was about. But over the decade preceding the manifesto, they became more of a full-fledged nonprofit doing different things, member communities, helping to go sponsor ways that we could actually go take this thing called Agile and build a more effective, humane and more sustainable way of working. And so Agile, as you know, we can teach some of these concepts really quickly, but in order to master it, it could take years for us to really get good at it. So I want to start this conversation off today to talk about specifically Agile and innovation. And as you have been working in Agile, or if you're new to Agile, I really want to get some people's perspective around a conversation that I had with a group of people about 2 months ago. And that was they were struggling within the Agile space to make it more innovative. They were finding that their product backlog was so far backed up with all of the different things that had been defined that their ability to go off and innovate within that space, they felt constricted. And I threw up this diagram here looking at sort of the end-to-end innovation processes. And what's kind of interesting, if you go through and look at different diagrams that are up on the web, they always put Agile development sort of in this kind of solution space, meaning sort of taking whatever the ideas are, from the insight to the problems, and that refinement by the time it gets to the Agile team in certain cases ends up being sort of this, let's go just bring it to production, let's go bring it to scale, and some of that innovation portion of it, sort of early ideation, even some of the spikes that might take place happen before it gets to the quote production team. And I find that that is somewhat short-sighted because I think Agile can stretch a little bit further than what some people have sort of, put it into a very small box within certain teams. And I'm not sure if you've seen this same type of pattern within your groups, or whether or not you have patterns that work when you're doing your development, whether or not Agile is part of the equation of how you innovate as a company. Now, what's kind of interesting from a strategic priority perspective is that if you go look at organizations today, all of them will say, we want to be more innovative. There's not one organization that that probably doesn't have a strategic goal to be more innovative as a company. But if you look at the actual innovation performance, and this was if you look at these surveys that are out there, that most come in at, well, you're getting less than 10% of that goal is actually people innovating. The rest, there's just this gap of never having the time, never having the ability to be able to spend towards working on innovation. And it's probably important to think about what innovation is. So when somebody says go be innovative, I've always thought about this in the terms of, can I call myself innovative? Or is it what the customer thinks of us? And I happen to be the strong believer that the feedback loop coming to us is what reinforces us being innovative, meaning we produced something, we thought that this was going to be a potentially innovative thing, but we don't really close that loop until a customer looks at it and goes, wow, that is very cool. That is something I've never seen before. So I think there's a secondary component with this, which is, yes, I can be thinking that I'm doing innovative things, but I think there has to be a closed loop into that actually says that, yes, we are coming up with those innovative ideas and those types of concepts, whether it be innovating on the product, innovating on the actual way that we deliver a product. All of those things, I think, comes from the perspective of an outsider looking at us versus it just being the perspective of just, what I think, which I think is kind of an off base. One other concept just to kind of throw into this is that if you look at, what in our industry, again, back to this, narrowing down where Agile fits within the grand scope of just where innovation ideas and concept development and all of that comes into. A lot believe that Scrum as a methodology ends up being more towards that sort of development and production launch type of methodology. And I know that Scrum is one of the most dominant patterns that's out there today. Scrum, as you know, requires at the very beginning a very well-written user story. And then from there, the question is that coming from that epic or that sort of bigger story format, how do we go bring innovation into that? Because as you know, an epic could probably be satisfied multiple different ways. A lot of contrast could be added to it in order to go push it towards more of an innovation versus a standard sort of out of the box thing that we would typically deliver. The other thing is that design thinking, lean startup, hackathons, all of those other things are sort of these bolt-ons that you've heard over the last couple of years. I was actually, somebody tweeted, and I don't know why people tweet these things, lean startup is dead. I think somebody did that not too long ago. And same thing with Agile. You get those on a yearly cadence. Somebody's going to rotate around and say, one of these methodologies is gone. But, contrary to that, lean startup techniques are alive and well. Design thinking is alive and well. And so are these other methods. The question is in Agile, how do we bring them together in a way for us to be able to work well and to be able to bring in more innovative ideas into our work? So with that, my question for today is, how do you as a coach or as a leader within your organization, how do you foster innovation in Agile? Please provide specific examples of ways that you have done that within your work. To add to that, what is your largest impediment to be innovative in an agile context with both your product, your design, and your methods innovation in agile? And what are you doing about it? And specifically, by the way, when I talk about methods innovation, why are we still 20 years in and still being the most prominent thing that we're using is still Scrum or a variation of Scrum or a variation of a Kanban board? Where are those new ideas that we haven't been seeing? Is that just a product of us not talking about it enough? Or is that the fact that these innovations are not really coming out? So I'd love to hear those perspectives as well. To kick us off on this, Shauna, welcome back. Do you have some thoughts on this?
I do. I want to start off by saying innovation is it really is a loaded term. My idea of innovation is that it's really about thinking outside of the box. There's technology innovation, which is platform services, APIs, how we might be delivering software differently. There's product innovation or portfolio innovation, which is how can we build something that we may not be building today that we can add to our portfolio. And so, the questions that come up for me are, do we have time to think outside of the box, or do we come up with a roadmap and we're constantly delivering? I think that's one. Number two is, do we include the entire team in innovation? And the first one, some of the things that you talked about, Ray, like hackathons or, some of these workshops or events that we come up with, I think are really ways of companies trying to give employees space to innovate and to have dedicated time to do that. So I think if you think about that timing, it's really about giving teams time. So, if you're sprinting, if you're going every single day about some of those, it's like, how do you continue to do that on a day-to-day basis, even when you're pretty thick in trying to deliver? So for us, I think we like to try to give our teams time to whether it's once a month or every other Friday, how do you fit that in? The second thing I talked about is, do we include the whole team? Oftentimes I see design sprints or design and product teams coming together, but it doesn't always include engineering. So oftentimes I see engineering getting left out of the innovation process when we're trying to discover new ways to get customers to interact with products, et cetera. And I think that it's really important when you do those innovation sessions to ensure that you're absolutely including the entire team.
How do you then make sure that those people get included? I mean, do you find that there's any hesitation from that other team that suddenly says, "Oh, we don't want those people to participate," or "Oh, we want to just keep it a limited scope this time"? Do you find that that's a difficult thing to include people?
Yeah, I think that the reason why that happens is that we tend to think of product and design as the ones that come up with the look and feel, or how things, how we should interact with our customers, and engineers as the builders. Instead of thinking of bringing the two together, if we build it in this way, or having an understanding, like let's say that we're building a mobile app, engineers already know inherently how things work or how they should behave. So when you bring those two things together, it's very powerful. It is a culture shift for a lot of companies. So my recommendation is to do some trials. Like, hey, this is a really big idea or project that we have coming up. Can we try something different this time? Can we try doing a design sprint that is inclusive of all of these people and just see how it goes? And sometimes if you try things on a small scale, it tends to work much better.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Jorg, how about yourself?
Yeah, lots of thoughts to this. Maybe first starting with what you asked last, are we not seeing new innovations in Agile? I strongly believe there are a lot of things out there, but as well, I believe we are a big industry now, so it needs to be catchphrase, easy to explain, fitting into a single book to really get beyond the white noise of daily change for everybody to recognize what's happening. So I believe that there are much more good ideas and actually good practices than there are names for those things. So I think that is more a matter of scaling the methodology to a name, to something worth promoting, coaching, whatever. I don't believe that the individual ability to innovate has really reduced within the people practicing and looking for this. And with that, looking to how I get my teams to behave interested, I would say, because for me, innovation comes out of interest, curiosity, and a lot of human exchange. If you don't talk about things, it's really hard. Nobody consistently innovates in his own four walls, closed door environment because he's just not getting enough new impulses. So just to give you a few practical things that I believe definitely enhance innovation. One thing is getting different people together on a, I wouldn't say high frequency, but repeating frequency with a random mix. So one of the companies I worked for, they had in front of the canteen a really world-class coffee machine. And that was just only probably half the size it should have been to accommodate everybody. The idea was simple. You queued up because the coffee was perfect and free, and you talked to somebody in the queue while you were waiting. And that was the idea for innovation. And I can tell you, it worked very well for me to get really in touch with people out of a big organization that I would otherwise probably not have really spoken to. And that created a lot of interaction, which again created ideas, which then could be multiplied in some way or other. So just creating those opportunities and actually being aware of the shift from I'm here to produce something to I'm here to think about something. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think Dave Snowden explains it, that normally human beings take 15 minutes to shift from the doing and achieving mode to the thinking and reflecting mode, or vice versa, if they don't have a routine and a switch to get you orientated differently. So if you can introduce such a routine into your teams, that really makes them stop finishing and start thinking, and stop thinking and start finishing, whichever way you just want to go, then you have a different environment, and you can actually decide that something like a retrospective is, we have all the things on the table, let's just walk through them and get the best learning, which is just execution, or actually we feel pretty good, that can't be true, there must be something more. So let's get into the thinking and brainstorming mode and inspect the data. And you can do this in a lot of things. You can do it in a sprint demo. And if you're conscious about what you're really looking for, you open a lot of doors, because I believe innovation is only produced incrementally, but anything disruptive is just random chance and a lot of good sensing. So always be curious, listen, and tell a lot of stories to different people, because they might surprise you with their take on it. That's probably the best thing. And just to explain, we really use in our teams just wristbands with 2 colors for productive work and thinking work. And I myself do this. We switch those to just get our mind to shift in the perspective. And I can tell you, at least for me, this works.
Oh, interesting. So you have a visual indicator on your arm that says, hey, I should be innovative at this point.
Actually, it's more the action of stripping off one and stripping on the other. I'm not really, at least not consciously looking at it.
That's interesting. I like that idea, because I think the uniform, putting on the uniform actually changes the behaviors. And so the ritual that you just defined, that's pretty cool. Thank you, Jorg, for that. And as we were talking about spaces, I know that April is here. April, what ideas do you have in this space?
Open space, of course. So
I would have not thought you would have brought that up.
No, not at all, right? Not at all. One of the ways that innovation can be unlocked is in open space. And I love open space, especially with my Agile community, but more so in organizations. You can really deal with a lot of complex problems, like those elephants that are in the room, and you find innovative ways on how to move forward and rethink about it differently. The space is different, so it creates room for breath to slow down. That's what open space provides you, is to kind of slow down so you can reimagine. And I've seen people who have a lot of wicked problems, and through open space, they walk away with several actions, and more often than not, almost every last one of them are executed and come to fruition. And that's why I think open space is beautiful for that, because it creates that breath to slow down, to look at something different, to ideate together, that collaboration that it invokes from all different voices, whoever are interested in it. So it's bringing knowledge over hierarchy to problems and new ideas to ELSA. How might we questions?
So along this line, I'm going to pretend for a second that there are people on this call that might not understand the simple rules that are put into open space to help to guide that emergence that you're talking about. Could you just really quick, just in case there are some novices to open space, just kind of go over what are those dynamics are that are set up to allow that to occur?
What powers open space is a few principles. One is who's ever there are the right people. So we're not concerned if the president, this other team leader, or somebody else aren't there. If you're there for that, whoever decided to come to this conversation are the right people. And sometimes it may be yourself, so you may have to be the one to move that forward. Another one is whatever happens is the only thing that could. You may think that a conversation is going to go one way, or you want your solution, and that may not happen. That's what's the beautiful is when we create these co-creative collaboration experiences, is that we get collective intelligence, right? And another one is wherever it happens is the right place. Sometimes it may not be in a scheduled meeting room. It may be while you're having coffee. And that's okay. That wherever that conversation happens, whoever there, it was okay. It starts when it starts. It's over. It's over. If you figure things out in a 15-minute conversation, or you are there for 3 hours, that's okay. We embrace that. Also, what something underlying between all of that is this level of freedom. This level of freedom that we call mobility. So within open space is this law of mobility that that invites you to join something if you're getting value from it. If you're not, go someplace else that you can. If you're adding or contributing value, stay. If you're not, it's okay to be someplace else. Did I miss anything, Ray?
No, I think you hit on it. I think I think the one thing that I just wanted to, and thank you for highlighting what those rules are. I mean, they're just very simple rules established in order to, I believe, if you think of the diversity that comes together, really exploits the one aspect of system thinking that, we would want, which is some great brains getting together, and of course the full body. We just don't want brains by themselves. So, but just people getting together and really just exploring, without constraints, which I think some of the rules lift some of the constraints that sometimes we live under. I think that does that. But I thank you. Hopefully everyone knew that already, but I just wanted to make sure that in case everyone didn't, that we're all on the same page. Thank you, April. Scott.
Yeah, so thank you for allowing me to participate. This is a wonderful opportunity. When I hear these issues, I my area is changing human behavior is sort of the underlying issue that drives Agile IT and project management. And I've been playing in this world for 45 years before Agile, but using many of the predecessor methodologies. And there are several things that come to mind when I hear about how to foster innovation, and what I've heard so far, I'm certainly in alignment with. But what comes to mind is, first of all, there's sort of three categories, one being the strategic, the vision, the second is the leadership, and the third are the teams. When we talk about it from the strategic, there's sort of three elements, and we get down to the one piece that we end up working with, which is where the innovation occurs. The three elements are we got money and resources, if you will. It includes people, of course, to keep the lights on, money and resources, whatever it might be, to organically grow. And then what's left over is a very small percentage, which is that area where there's strategic and other kinds of elements that are where we want to innovate and do something creative and new. And so we really got to be careful, because we have so little resources that really fit into that last category, because so much is dedicated to the other two. And so that's really kind of an important way to sort of narrow down what your priorities are, because you can't, we talk about these huge product backlogs, and it's like, well, wait a minute. It really is, it shouldn't be, because it means you can't have 10 number one priorities. And I've had leaders tell me, the reason why we failed is I have 10 number one priorities. So like, well, you can't possibly have any more than one. So anyway, there's that categorization and prioritization that fits into that last category of what is really where our vision is. And then you get into the leadership. Well, leadership to me is not a person. It's the chain of command, and chain sounds hierarchical, but it's the reporting relationships. And there is someone who is at the top, if you will, that is in charge of authorizing. They're the patron that makes it so. But what follows below or across from that, depending on how matrixed or whatever you are, is what I would refer to as those who are reinforcing. And it goes all the way to the front line. And it isn't, so you shouldn't have a break in that chain. And if you do, you're gonna falter in innovation. You're not gonna be able to foster, because someone is blocking the flow of what's in that strategic category, and the relationships of leadership is broken. And so that's where the leadership comes in. And then thirdly, the teams. And this gets into fostering. How do you foster the right group? Well, you look across the complexity of an organization, there's 1,000 cultures and 1,000 teams, informal and formal. But there usually is a set of folks out there that know something about the problem. And you do your research, it's the documents about it, it's the groups, and you interview across, and then you sit down after that, and it may take a team of interviewers, but the fact is, what happens is there's a natural representative group. It doesn't have to be large. In fact, it must be small, that becomes sort of the team that works with the topic and becomes the basis for perhaps being a self-managing team for product testing and development of some kind. So that's kind of the cycle that I would think of when I hear this topic, is the strategy level and what's left of the resources, the leadership and having it all connected and unbroken. And lastly, the team that you form out of it. That now, again, that team can have ad hoc entries into it. You might have 7 or so people, but it can be added to and subtracted from informally for just that day where you need to bring in that insight from that particular product group or what have you. But anyway, those are the 3 elements that come to mind, and how very specifically innovation comes together. If I might do a plug, and it's not meant to do anything other than, I did write a book on this recently, and it's just come out, and it's called The Innovator. And it does take the concept of how do we take organizational change and organizational behavior and couple that with Agile IT and project management. And it's available on Amazon. And I'd love to hear feedback from anyone who's read it about how it's helped them. It's told as a story, It's a collection of my career into a narrative and a topic that says, here's this project that blew up, and 5 years later, here's how we succeeded and how we applied the methodology that I just described. Thank you for letting me speak.
Oh, no problem. And congratulations on your book. Having written one a long time back, I can tell you that, man, that's a hard process, but congratulations on doing that.
Thank you.
One thing, as you were talking about the formation of that team, the individuals, maybe you can give some contrast to this, that me as the leader standing up to saying, this is the problem, who wants to join and work on the problem, versus I'm going to voluntold you and I want you, and you, and you, and you. You're going to be on this team and I don't care what you think about it. I need you on this team. Go innovate. Do you find that we're doing too much of the latter model versus anyone who has the passion to just dive in?
There are very few instances where rules have to be dictated and things have to be dictated. There are certainly non-negotiables, but there is a natural order, if you will, of who has touched the topic and tasted it and has an opinion of value to offer, and they're discoverable. And if you can go through a structured process, and there is one, of finding those folks, getting their input, and then because of that, I mean, okay, here's a simple situation. I have sat down with, an organization, 90,000 people. I'm supposed to figure out a problem within 30 days and come up with a solution, which is an impossible task. And I start asking, okay, who are the key players involved? And they say, well, there's this group and this group. So I say, okay, just bring each group together into 1 hour meeting. And I'm going to ask them basically 2 questions. What are the top 5 things that work in this particular area where you're struggling? And what are the top 5 things that don't? And the dialogue just explodes. And out of the room, there might be 2 people in that you just want to talk to later, even more. And you do that across these 10 groups in an organization over 30 days, and you've got more data that'll tell you exactly what's going on and how to solve it than you can imagine, and the people who can drive it. No mandate.
Yeah, I love the way that you brought that up. And I do believe that the fact of diversity, bringing, especially in design, I think sometimes the designs do end up, being way off mark because they don't have a diverse group working on them. So I appreciate your input onto all of this. Let's see. We also have another Scott. Are you there?
So I guess I wanted to go back to one of the very first things you brought up very quickly. I don't believe there's anything in the Agile Manifesto or its values that suggests that innovation was an important part of what they were talking about.
No, interesting.
It doesn't say it can't be, but even the last principle on retrospectives says the team reflects on how to become more effective. That doesn't really suggest that they're trying to be more product innovative necessarily. So I think the subject of innovation is really separate from the subject of, gee, why isn't Agile more innovative and why don't we have Agile teams being innovative? We had innovative teams in Waterfall, but it wasn't because they were following Waterfall. It was because there was an organizational culture that was encouraging innovation apart from the expectations of product delivery. And I don't know too many organizations that come into Agile, go through their training, and suddenly believe that now they should be doing innovation. If they weren't doing it before, Agile isn't going to make them do it now. I think it's a different thing to think about. Like I said, doesn't mean you can't have innovation using Agile teams, but you don't need Agile teams to have innovation. I've seen people in Agile teams be innovative in their effectiveness of their own practices, but I don't see a great encouragement that Agile teams any more than Waterfall teams are expected to be product innovative.
So within that scope, though, as I said in the opening, most companies have a vision or a mission to be more innovative. So my assumption is that somehow within the scope of Agile work, and as you said, even Waterfall work, that we should have some way of sequencing and doing more innovative type of things.
Well, like I said, I've worked for the last 50 years in software development. Every company's had some sense of, oh, we want to be innovative. We want to do this. We want to do that. The problem is it never finds its way into practice. It's one of these nice things that executives say, but when push comes to shove, they want the product cranked out. And then if we have time to be innovative, that can happen. And so individuals, if they want to go off and spend time on their own, and this is what I've seen from people, they do it in their own time. And if they're really clever and can get other stuff done, they work out the time somehow. But very few companies that I've seen actually have a culture of specific ways of encouraging innovation. Sometimes you hear about companies that are doing things with, FedEx days and some stuff like that, and the stuff that I think Atlassian has done and other companies have done. But very few companies really have a sense of really giving people the idea that they have this permission. Even in Bell Labs, I was there for 15 years. As a member of technical staff, the idea was I was supposed to spend 20% of my time being innovative. That was a day a week. And you hardly had any time to do that unless you were in special groups. I got into one of those special groups, fortunately. But most people in Bell Labs were day-to-day, get the job done, get the engineering done. If somebody suddenly has a clever idea and they can make it work, great. But if they didn't feel they had the time to do that, it would just die on the vine. So even a company like the Bell System, which highly regarded itself for being innovative, didn't often really make it possible to be innovative. And it had nothing to do with what development process they were following or what philosophy they had.
Well, what you bring up is interesting, because one of the things that, at least, my perception of just work in general, is the biggest constraint in most companies is not money. And it's not, people. Most of these companies have lots of people.
Right.
I think the biggest constraint is time. And how do we, to your point, how do we give the space in order for people to be able to do that type of work? And I'll just pick on, the new company that I just joined says, hey, we have no meetings Friday. But it's amazing how that starts off as no meeting Friday. Suddenly it creeps into, now I've got a fully booked calendar on Friday. So even that encroachment of a simple process of not having meetings, so you can be more innovative, have more time to think, that gets stomped on because of just other priorities. So one of the things that just give you an idea of what we had did at my prior company is that when somebody, instead of giving somebody a reward of dollars for doing some great thing, which if you do the math and you look at it and you say, well, I spent all this extra time and you gave me this bonus, and that adds up to some really low amount for what I just saved the company, we actually reversed it and started giving people time. You have 1 week to go work on whatever you want, but you just have to demo it at the end, or you get a small sabbatical to go off and work in an innovation lab for a little bit. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to do all the rest of your day job. So I think there are processes and ways of doing it.
So it's a commitment of time. It's a cultural thing. It's a feeling of what it means to tell people that we want innovation to happen.
Right. Well, and again, for the intercept of this question is, how can we be more innovation? How can we bring more innovation into Agile? So yeah, so I do understand your points with the manifesto and how it was written and all of that. So I appreciate your input, Scott, quite a bit. Let's see, Israel, are you there? Hey, welcome back. You were here. You were on the last one.
This is my second time. Yeah.
Well, welcome.
When you asked this question and I started thinking about it, from the perspective of team facilitators. And part of my reason for doing that was I recently went through an exercise where I created a little model where I was demonstrating the difference between two teams, where one team was inhibited from innovating or becoming better at what they do, whereas another team was able to make more money, generate more money for the company because of the way they were going about reporting and measuring the work they did. And it dawned on me that team facilitators have a very interesting position to in this whole thing. We have an observer stance, we have the facilitation stance. We hear what's happening, and I think to some extent we sympathize with it. And so when I think about you know, a team facilitator who is trying to be content neutral, who's observing the team and realizing the pain points, and then wants to be the leader who serves the team, I think that's an opportunity to introduce innovation or innovative ideas. For instance, when you hear that the team is having a challenge, team is falling behind in the sprint, there's a very large story that's at risk of not completing, and you start to investigate, well, what's happening with the story. You find out that, well, there's an issue in the build process, and you can't test until you build. And well, every time you change a line of code, it takes several hours to rebuild. What I'm hearing is, you know, something that makes it hard to come to work in the morning. You don't want to arrive and have to deal with this kind of issue, especially when you feel like you're under pressure to finish in the time period. But now, as a facilitator, I can collect that information. I can bring it to review or take it from review and bring it into retrospective and say, you know, let's put down all of the things that are blocking us, or all the things that, you know, we feel are in our way, and just brainstorm this idea. What could we do to make this better? So from one standpoint, the team facilitator is recognizing the opportunity for innovation, brainstorming the ideas, collecting that information, and then I think you also, as a facilitator, have that opportunity to pivot when you speak to leadership, and you have that role of protecting the team and finding impediments and helping the team break those impediments. Well, that's that opportunity to you know, take the ideas to leadership, or if you're working with a center of practice, to you know, have conversations with other team facilitators and coaches working with other teams to find out what those teams might be doing. So I think that, you know, for everything I've heard some things that I think, you know, intersect with that in the previous folks who've spoken. But if it's going to work that way, if you're going to have team facilitators accomplishing this, this needs to be a part of the training. This needs to be something that's encouraged. It needs to be you know, something that you know, facilitators feel excited to do, a way to help the team to be the leader who serves, and in the long run helps out the whole organization. So yeah, I would look to ask the question, what role can team facilitation play in trying to move forward innovation?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I think the powerful questions that we ask, you know, those big open-ended questions, I think help to open the brain. Think about the way that we approach something. I think that, especially in facilitation and coaching, the way that we phrase that question of getting people to work on something, to think about it from a different perspective. And then I really like the idea of sharing those concepts between teams. I think that works really well. I appreciate your insight on this, Israel. Let's see, we still have lots of hands up, so I'm going to do my best to get to everyone, but we might actually go into a little bit of after hours with this. So please be patient if you've had your hand up for a little bit. We've just, you know, a lot of people have some ideas on this. Sheila, how are you?
One of the things I see is that you have people that are supposed to be doing strategy who don't include the people who are going to be doing implementation. And a lot of times they think about what they'd like in an ideal world without figuring out, can it be done? But the other thing is, without realizing it, they usually constrain themselves by what is. So I think it would be more helpful to include the people who will actually do the implementation and say, if you were going to try to do this today without the constraints of whatever already exists, what would you do then? Because I've been in meetings where people had gone through designing a whole product, a whole process around it, but it was all constrained by all of the things that they'd had to jury rig because of the limitations of what they currently had. The other thing is, when you talk about what's good for the customer, sometimes the customer doesn't know, and they aren't going to know, because maybe what's good for the customer is to have a more elegant technical solution, like something that makes the response time better, or something that gives you a better result from a search. But that's something that you're going to change technically that improves the product in a big way. But to most customers, they're not even going to realize there was a change. They just know they like the way things are working better. So those were a couple of thoughts I had.
Thank you for that. Let's see. Steve, are you there?
So innovation has been part of my focus, career focus, for 20 plus years. I won't say the 50 years that some folks have said, but certainly since the last century. And I think it's really interesting how innovation is somewhat a parallel universe to Agile. I would resonate with folks who say that innovation happens whether you're doing waterfall, Agile, or any other process. And, you know, there's been a general evolution, at least in the software business. It took until '68 before people said, well, software engineering. And then the waterfall was named in the early '70s. And then we had structured design in the late '70s, object-oriented in the '80s and into the '90s. And that's when Agile emerged. And one of my favorite references, Craig Larman's report on IEEE software in the early double noughts that said, well, you know, Agile is really a collection of practices and processes that have existed for quite some time. It's just that now they've been given a name. So what am I saying? And then, of course, web, etc. So there have been innovations before, after, and during the Agile revolution. But to me, innovation is more about partnerships. Open innovation is really about university partnerships. As a company, working in a company, not all the smart people either work for us or want to work for us. And therefore, there's a great value to being able to partner with different cultures and connect, for example, with the researchers who are not driven by the same timelines. And I think that also came up in conversation. And for companies to actually leverage this and spread and disseminate ideas that will lead to greater innovation, internal tech forums, sending your folks off to external conferences. It's about connections. It's about discussion. And to me, the pandemic has really sparked a greater move to hybrid and virtual innovation. In other words, it's increased access, it's reduced cost, but there are still social impediments. And, you know, I think that we have to understand that we do work on different timescales, and that's why I come back to the idea of partnering with universities and talent exchanges, bringing professors in for sabbaticals, internships, or sending our staff off for visiting scientistships at universities. So these are all strategies that can be used. Anyhow, thanks again for listening, and back to you.
No problem. Actually, I've had some really successful partnerships with universities in the past, and I think absolutely, I think that those are great things for people to explore. I'm looking to still get through everyone's names. I'm sorry, we're probably not going to reach it all, but Kimmy, are you there?
So I just wanted to share a couple of things that some Scrum Masters at my company have come up with. The first is the sprint of reflection, where it's taking an entire sprint where the team can spend time learning, working on proofs of concept, having guest speakers, and then coming back in the sprint review to share what they've learned during the sprint of reflection. And then the second one is, it's called a shenanigans ticket. So it's basically a little time box within a sprint to work on something innovative and then again share in the sprint review. So just two ideas that are used within my company.
So the shenanigans ticket, that you got me intrigued. How does that work?
So it's a ticket that's agreed on with the team, and it's time boxed. So it might be something that one of the engineers wants to work on, experiment with. So maybe it's setting aside 4 hours or a day in a sprint to allow that person to work on it. That
sounds beautiful. And do they earn it, or is it just they pitch it and then that's, you know, just cycled in?
That's a great question. And I think it's more that it's just something that you would pitch and cycle in.
Is it ever turned down? Just curious.
Not that I'm aware of. And I think it's not so common that it would become something that you would need to turn down.
Okay. I was just wondering if that, you walk in one day and you think to yourself, there's too many shenanigans going on over here. And I even like the word just because it's fun to say. But thank you for that. I appreciate your insights. Everyone, thank you for your time today. I think that one thing that's always great about some of these topics, if you notice, we changed the format a little bit. Roughly a couple of episodes ago, I found that we would pick a couple of topics, and we found that there was just so much interest in these things that people wanted to continue to talk for the entire hour. So we did have a program shift. People have seen that. That's why we're at a single topic per episode right now. We can go back to the older format if people want to. Just send me a note and let me know what you feel about the changes that we made here. Agile 2022 is coming up, and this is from our sponsor. If you haven't signed up for the Big Agile Conference, please go take a look at it. Also, XP, I don't have a slide for that. That's also coming up as well. That's in June. And then July for Agile 2022. The XP is going to be over in Copenhagen. Beautiful city, great people. This is the marrying between academia and industry, so this is a good place to go do the networking that Steve had talked about. Agile 2022, I'll let you know that we're going to be doing the Business Agility Lab there. I will be there. There will be a number of great facilitators that will be joining me in that lab, which is including Shauna. Shauna, are you excited?
Excited. It's going to be so much fun.
Cool. We are probably the ones that have the most topics if you go look on the website. And that's because we actually co-facilitate each of these sessions that are there. And the way that works is we spend, about 15 minutes of a launch question, and then we just explore that topic as deep as we can within that period of time. So come join us at the Business Agility Lab. Come enjoy the entire event. We look forward to having you there. It's going to be a blast. It'll be good to be back live again with people. The next ACN recording live event is going to be on June 24th. I look forward to having you there. Go listen to the podcast. Go recommend the podcast to your friends and family. Not sure exactly if your family will be into it, but go recommend it around. We're currently right now up to approaching 150,000 plays, which is really cool. And we have, roughly anywhere from about several thousand people who listen to it per month. And we really appreciate the listenership on that. Always, we're open to feedback. Please let us know. The goal is that we want this to be of great benefit to you. With that, have a great month, and I look forward to seeing you all in June. This podcast is provided by Agile Alliance for educational and informative purposes only. To find out more information about the member-supported Agile Alliance, please go to agilealliance.org to find out about more upcoming events, as well as different programs that are available to help you with your Agile journey.